Howdy folks, and welcome to the Minsanity Podcast. Today's guest is someone that straddles the space between mineral collecting, geology, and academia. He obtained his PhD in volcanology from Washington State University and now teaches at UC San Diego. He's collecting minerals for many decades, going back to childhood, and is instilling kids today with a passion for earth science and the world around them. Dr. Geoff Cook, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
So Geoff, you're one of a number of folks I know who is in the academic world in geology, but also loves minerals, and it sounds like your interest in minerals goes back to when you were pretty young. Tell me a little bit about what got you into rocks and into minerals as a kid.
Yeah, so I was born in the Boston area, and my uncle was a fairly prolific mineral collector in the New England region for many decades, but primarily in the 60s and 70s. So he got my dad and I interested, and he would take us to different quarries throughout New Hampshire and Maine, and it became a real love and a real obsession. And I just kind of always knew that I wanted to have some kind of a career in geology, and that really is what got me into it.
Cool. So your uncle then would take you field collecting and go to mineral shows and stuff, and that's very cool to have that family influence.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Boston then, and sounds like we're pretty into rocks as a kid. And then that sort of led into wanting to pursue geology in college. And then how did you end up out in Washington?
So I knew in high school that I wanted to be a geologist. And at the time, because I had such a love of minerals, I thought I would be a mineralogist. So I went to a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, Franklin and Marshall College.
Okay, yep.
And I was super excited, started taking all the classes, and I got into mineralogy, and I was just eager as can be.
Yep.
And the professor said to me, "You can't be a mineralogist anymore." And my jaw dropped, and I felt cold, like my dreams were falling apart. He said, "Nobody does mineralogy."
Okay.
In addition, he had kind of a negative feeling about people who were mineral enthusiasts and collectors. So that was sort of the start of...
Well, this is something I've encountered in my life too, in my academic experience sometimes with mineral collecting versus academic geology.
Yeah, he definitely, he said it's all about the science. It's not about collecting. It's not about aesthetics. It's not about the love of the
playing with these minerals is a waste of time.
Yes. So I had kind of a slightly negative experience in my mineralogy class, which was sad because I felt like it was going to be the next step on my way to a career in mineralogy.
Sure.
I developed an interest in volcanoes. So for my master's degree, I went out west, and I was at Boise State, and I did some work in the Cascades.
Oh, neat.
And then my PhD at Washington State was on Valles Caldera in New Mexico. And my expertise is large silicic eruptions, what a lot of people would call supervolcanic eruptions.
Yes, wow.
But I always retained a love of minerals. When I taught at University of Rhode Island for a couple of years, I taught the earth materials class. And then when I got my job at UC San Diego, they said, "We need someone to teach mineralogy." And I felt like my world had reopened because my dream of doing mineralogy was back. So,
well, that's great. That's great to hear. And, in academia today, there's always the balance between those who are focused just on paper output and, advising students, and then those that teach and instill a sense of wonder and excitement in particularly undergrads. And, it sounds like you've taken a little bit of the latter path. And, what was it partly informed by your interest in minerals and that kind of curiosity that got you interested in teaching and working with undergrads?
I saw my professors at F&M, and I thought to myself, I want to do that job. That looks amazing. And I think a lot of college geology students are interested in becoming professors, and then they realize that it's kind of a long trip to get there, and they do other things. Always had an interest in teaching, TA'd a few classes as an undergrad, TA'd extensively as a master's and PhD student. I always knew that I wanted a teaching-focused type of career, but I thought I'd end up at a liberal arts college. So when I was at URI, I was looking online at the jobs, and this position opened up at UC San Diego, and it was for a teaching professor, which was an interesting thing. I hadn't heard of that before. And the UC and some other university systems have faculty positions, so tenured faculty positions where your primary focus is undergraduate education.
Yeah, fantastic.
And your research is still there, but it's secondary. And it was like my dream job, and I looked at my wife, who I shared an office with, and I said, I think that's me. And she looked and she said, that is you. So I've been there for 14 years, and I get to teach a ton of classes, and I do some research on the side, and it is motivating and inspiring, and I can truly say that it is my dream job.
That's fantastic. That's really wonderful to hear. And it sounds like being at a big public university, your students come from a pretty wide range of backgrounds and experiences. What has that been like as far as getting them interested in geology, getting them interested in earth science?
We do get a lot of STEM majors at UCSD. It's known as a STEM campus, but for the most part, they come to us wanting to be pre-med, biology, engineering, other disciplines. So we've tried really hard to get students into low-stakes freshman kind of first-year experiences in classes where they get to see how amazing this kind of stuff is. And we really work hard to take them out in the field, show them amazing specimens, and I've shown them a bunch of the stuff that I've gotten from you, which is always fun. And we just try to inspire them, and we get a lot of converts because they take our classes, like an introductory physical geology class, and they get really excited. Which is thrilling.
Exactly. It's really satisfying seeing that. And, my experience when I TA'd earth materials, which all freshmen had to take at the Colorado School of Mines, probably similar to some of your intro survey courses, is that it was remarkable to me, and obviously I'm biased as a mineral collector and a geologist, but how few of these kids, and this is at the Colorado School of Mines, an earth science focused school, they had never had a geology class. They had zero exposure to earth science in high school. So, you're kind of like the first step, I imagine, and the first exposure for a lot of these kids. And to, you can have a career in earth science. It's an incredibly broad field. Here's all the things that you can do.
Yeah, it's not part of the curriculum in every state. I know in California it's not part of the curriculum, so a lot of them will take an environmental science class as an option, but it is humbling to be the one that teaches some of these lower div classes, because you're really selling it, and we need geoscientists and we need people to be interested in all this stuff. So it's like I said, it's humbling and an honor and exciting, but sometimes they're really grateful to have an outlet that they didn't know about. They'll say, I thought I had to be a mechanical engineer or a physician, and there's this incredible world that's really diverse and exciting. So.
And like you said, we need geoscientists more than ever, between energy and climate change and minerals, and a lot of the 21st century problems that we have require an earth science solution. So you're steering people to that, which is really cool. So on the mineral side of things, I know that a group of minerals that you particularly appreciate, which is a little bit of a neglected stepchild of the mineral world, are zeolites. Tell me a little bit about how you got into zeolites.
So when I was 12 years old, I asked for and received for Christmas Zeolites of the World by Rudy Chernick, that blue
and that's
book.
The Bible of zeolites. I mean, this is not the kids first zeolite book. This is a book this thick. That, Wow.
Yeah, I wanted it. I got it. Initially, I can't lie, it was a lot about the pictures. I thought the photos were amazing, and I started reading about the different species. And it's not a fluid read, It's like very technical and very much a reference. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and I've been collecting zeolites and Indian minerals and Pacific Northwest minerals ever since, and I really do like them. But I know when you walk around here or other mineral shows, people ask, what are you into? And if it's not fluorite or something like that, it's a little bit...
They may look at you a little funny if you say zeolites.
Right.
But the diversity and quality is astounding, right? And I love the stories of, and you probably know some of these stories, in the late 19th century, zeolites from India were actually very highly valued because they were very rare at that time, and they were found in the Jewel Tunnel imports. The Jewel Tunnel was a railway tunnel in India that contained amygdaloidal pockets with zeolites. And you look at some of the old prices, these were selling for $5 or $10 in 1880. And adjusted for inflation, that's still a $5 apophyllite, So I think people forget that. And also, as a volcanologist, right, understanding the process of, the Deccan Plateau is one of the greatest, large igneous provinces on Earth. It's this massive eruption So I imagine it must be satisfying for you. You sort of think of it in the geologic context, and then you have the specimens.
I always had an interest in volcanoes. I think
Yep.
if a kid's going to be interested in anything geologic, it's going to be vertebrate paleontology or volcanoes, and probably to a lesser extent pretty rocks and minerals. So
totally.
I think it merged my interests. I will say that when I was a PhD student, my advisor used to bring me rocks from the Columbia River basalt, and he would say, "Can you tell me what these bleep, bleep, bleep minerals are in these vesicles?" Because he knew I was a zeolite person, and they'd always mess with our geochemical analyses because you want to do the whole rock analysis.
To do whole rock, interesting.
So it's worked out, and
great.
I do really like them, but I've tried to diversify. I've tried to, especially when I bring in stuff for class, when I want to show students really cool materials.
Yep.
My wife was very clear. She said, not everyone is going to want to see zeolites.
Sure.
I try to get stuff with color and stuff with cool shape. And
well, zeolites can have both those things.
They can.
And I know another group of minerals that you appreciate are rock-forming minerals, particularly micas and feldspars.
I do like my tectosilicates, so I definitely like the zeolites and the feldspars. My wife will let me bring home as many micas as I can possibly bring home, so that's always kind of fun. And
cool.
And I think some of the basic ones I think are some of the most interesting ones. I think I've brought in dozens of feldspars with different crystallography and twins.
They're
and
amazing.
Modifications.
And another satisfying thing, whether it's collecting zeolites or certain rock-forming species, is that you can build a really high-quality collection on a relatively reasonable budget, which these days is not true for most minerals.
Right. Especially if they're from a hot locality or a location where they're going pretty high. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So that's fun. So I know that part of your work with students is doing some field work and going around in Southern California and exposing them to geology. Have you ever taken students mineral collecting? And have you ever had students sort of want to get out in the field and see where these minerals are coming from and get that kind of connection?
I teach the introductory physical geology class. I teach the mineralogy class. I teach the volcanology class, which is upper division. But I do teach a freshman seminar. So we have these very cool freshman seminars, which are very low stakes.
Yep.
Pass, no pass, 1 unit, and it's a themed topic for a quarter. So I do a minerals, crystals, and gems seminar. I do a rock seminar. I do a volcano seminar. We've done some field trips. So we have, we're blessed with pegmatites in San Diego County.
Absolutely.
So we've taken them to a few of the pegmatite mines. And we try to get them out as much as possible. And we've had a few who have said, you know what, I'm switching to this major because I enjoy being outside. And it's definitely gratifying. So I definitely try to get them outside.
Yep.
And we definitely try to bring in as many hand specimens as we possibly can because I think they're captivating and the students really enjoy it. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, mineralogy in particular is a tactile science, right? Right.
And being a collector and having a sense of collection like you do, most universities these days don't have a large or really high quality teaching collection.
Right.
I remember this from when I was TAing, Geology 101. The first lab is Mineral ID lab.
Yeah.
And the minerals that they're trying to ID, the specimens are horrible.
Yeah.
So after teaching that, I donated a whole bunch of stuff to the department because, they're supposed to look at the galena and, this is cubic. And it's so rubbed and rounded, it just looks like a blob.
Right.
So by bringing in high quality specimens like you're doing, that's really, it's instructional and it's also probably inspiring for the students to get to see that.
Yeah, so I definitely have worked to try to get stuff for the collections at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, which is my department, and UCSD. But I do know a number of departments that have completely given up their mineral collections, and they don't have a collection. And the stuff they show to students is like you're saying, it's a lot of those are consumables, right? In those labs where they're going to scratch them.
Exactly.
And break
them. You don't want a great crystal to be clear for a scratch test.
Right. Like we wouldn't take in something like this and have.
But it needs to at least be recognizable for the mineral.
But they don't have collections that they can show students. To show this is what a good specimen should look like. So, and I've been at odds with some of my colleagues at times about how to teach a mineralogy class. I really believe firmly that if you're going to teach minerals, you need to show them minerals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So your wife is also a geology professor. Tell me a little bit about what she does and how you guys connected. And
she and I are both trained in volcanology.
Yep.
She was at University of Oregon working on her PhD, and we came to the conclusion that it was highly unlikely we'd both get a position in the same discipline in the same field.
Sure. Yeah.
So she kind of sidetracked, and she got an education degree in addition to her geology degrees.
Okay.
And she taught third grade for a couple of years.
Oh, neat.
And she
Okay,
enjoyed
wow.
that.
Yeah.
And then the opportunity to teach at a Cal State near where we live in San Diego
great.
came up, and she teaches earth science.
Oh,
which
great. Okay.
is fun because we can compare notes and pedagogies, and actually she's way better with the pedagogy angle, so she helps me out a lot.
Okay,
so
great.
We definitely have fun, but as I
Yeah.
said, micas and Spanish pyrites, I have
Yeah.
carte blanche with that, but anything else...
Nice. Now, does she collect minerals also, or is...
She has.
Okay, yeah.
And she's definitely into the stuff that we have.
Yep.
But like I said, if it's a mica or a Spanish pyrite, she's probably more interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So where do you find your interests are today as far as mineral collecting and what you kind of get out or are trying to get out of mineral collecting?
Yeah, I had a phase for a while, and the phase was that I would buy any scolecite, mesolite, naturalite that I came across.
Yeah.
And my lovely...
How big is your house now?
It's not. It's San Diego. It's a modest townhome. My wife said, "You have to stop buying all these white spiky things," and I said, "Okay."
Hopefully,
deal.
you don't have a cat. Yeah.
No cats. Good call. So I definitely have dialed back on that, but I do still have an interest in the Indian minerals.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of them, but when they're good, they're real good.
Yeah.
And when they're not so good, they're not so good. So I still have an interest in that. But as you mentioned before, I do kind of have a passion for feldspars.
Yeah.
Really enjoy them. And I've gotten a couple of coppers from you, and I've got kind of a new
I'm glad
passion
I'm
for
sort of
copper.
turning you over, the metals for me are a passion, and I think it ties in for me to being an economic geologist, being an ore geologist. And they're amazing, and they're probably fun for instructional purposes too, right? Because every person knows what copper is, but when they see this object that you tell them this is crystalline copper, then you can probably kind of see the gears turning.
They love the intricacies of different crystal forms. And one of my favorite things in teaching minerals now is to take in a bunch of the same species so they can see how there are similarities with the crystallography and the physical attributes, but they can look really different. And I think their minds are blown sometimes when they see, like, here's 15 quartz crystals and they all have subtle nuances and inclusions and differences.
Completely. They're all different.
They definitely, in the past, I had a colleague that called me the kindergarten professor because I brought in so much show and tell that he thought it was funny, and I'll proudly own that, and I'll wear that badge.
No, I think that's great.
It is fun.
You know, I mean, it goes back to I think of my path through school, and some of my favorite instructors were those that really they had that sense of wonder themselves. And they were able to instill that sense of kind of childlike wonder and curiosity in their students. You know, not everybody can do that, and
Yeah, I
think
cool in academia, as you mentioned when we started, there definitely is a mentality where you either do the science or you're a collector or an enthusiast,
right?
And the two have to be mutually exclusive. I really fundamentally disagree with that. I think you can do great science, and I think you can be a collector, interested, a hobbyist, and I think they can overlap. And I've worked at that.
Absolutely. And something I love about mineralogy, and that mirrors my background, is that there isn't a fine line, like you said, between the so-called amateur and the professional, the academic. You know, so-called amateur mineralogists and mineral collectors actually contribute a lot to the field, whether it's new mineral species, you know, field work, all kinds of different things. And I think that a lot of people in the academic world, not all, but a lot of them appreciate that and are eager for those kind of collaborations. And I've been able to do some of that collaboration myself, and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, I've learned a ton from so-called hobbyists, and I continue to learn, and I think as any good educator ought to, I try to be a lifelong learner, and I learn even when I'm here just shopping around, looking around. I learned
Totally.
a ton of information.
Yeah.
Rudy Chernick, who's, as I said, I got his book when I was 12. It got me out on a lifetime of zeolites.
Yeah.
He was a postman, and he was interested in
I
collecting.
remember that. Yeah, he worked for the post office.
And he, he didn't have any formal training, and he was the world expert on zeolite minerals, and then he was at the Rice Museum. So, I think there should be a free flow and no academic bias. It's too stuffy. It's giving academics a bad name.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So have you had some students in particular that you can think of that you kind of, when you met them, they had maybe a casual interest, and then you saw them really get into minerals and into, a career in earth science?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think a lot of them follow me here, so they know that they know the show's going on, and they'll show up and they'll say, "Oh, can I walk around with you?"
Oh,
look
cool.
around?
That's great.
And I've had students who've got really, really engaged with minerals and mineral science and rocks.
Great.
And they've gone on to do some really wonderful things. It's really gratifying.
Cool. So if you had a few words maybe of advice or general comments to a young person who might be watching this program and thinking about a career in earth science but not really sure how to approach that and what the next steps are, what are a few things that you might...
I think there are phenomenal online resources. So the American Geosciences Institute is a nonprofit, and they have a great website, and they have all kinds of information about careers and workforce trends and what you can do in geosciences. I think talking with people at museums, I think museums are a great resource. You talk to curators, you talk to people who volunteer as docents. I think reaching out to university or community college professors is always a good option. And to be completely fair, if they're doing their job right, they should be receptive to those kinds of inquiries. If they're not receptive, then they're not really doing their job.
Yeah.
So,
I like that. Yeah. No, for me, my journey through academia was circuitous and up and down, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And from, going to engineering school and flunking out because I didn't realize geology and engineering are very different things, to being at community college for a year, to, going to a different institution. That journey was cool. And when I think back on it, some of the most influential people were the faculty who took a little bit of a different approach, who said, you know what, I understand that you're a non-traditional student. I understand that you really love minerals and you might want to play with minerals more than, making a stereo net. And you get that because you're straddling these different worlds. And I think students really like that. Students like seeing that.
Yeah, I think good teaching is teaching where you're passionate about the subject, and I think students respond to that. And if you have interest, that helps them. Yeah. And I definitely I encourage students. Sometimes they'll say, I think this mineral looks pretty, and I think it's appealing. Is that okay? And I say, of course that's okay. That's what you're passionate about.
Yeah, that has validity.
That leads to an understanding of the crystal lattice and all the other stuff that we look at.
Well, that's the thing. We all start with aesthetics. We all start with what's easiest to comprehend.
Yeah.
And then you kind of peel back the layers of the onion, and you see, oh, okay, well, let me learn about crystallography. Let me learn about geochemistry. Let me learn about So, yeah. It's part of the journey. So we're here in Tucson at the 2024 Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. What is something you've seen around the show that excites you in particular, or you thought was just the bee's knees?
Well, I hope it's okay to say I got a pretty good Smithsonite from you, which I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah.
And the other piece, the topaz, my wife wants to drill a hole in and put a necklace on it and hang it.
For reference viewers, this is about a 5-pound topaz, so that's going to be like a Flavor Flav topaz.
Yeah. She's since walked that back. I'm going to use that for crystallography. I've seen so much good stuff. As always, it's overwhelming. I did see a very cool collection of feldspars that a dealer had, and it turns out the woman he got it from collected feldspars her entire life, and that was really kind of fun to see. So.
Yeah, that is cool. That's the fun thing about this show is the variety. Any specialty, any mineral, it's going to be here.
Yeah.
Well, Geoff, thank you for being on the program.
Of course, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And enjoyed chatting.
Thank you.